So, Stephen D here on Pure 24/7 Radio, and I am once again joined by our good friend Bob Goody from Rural Missions. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you on again.
Thank you for having me for the fourth time.
The fourth time,
Exciting times.
It is. So one of the things that's interesting is we first met you at the Hand in Hand Conference, which is the National Children's and Families Conference. I think the only one of its kind, isn't it, really?
It is the only one of its kind to my knowledge.
And what they do is they look after children's and families and youth and helping people to be resourced for that. So that's where we first met you. And that kind of brings us on quite nicely to children, families and youth within rural contexts. So let's jump into that today, shall we?
Yeah. So straight off the bat, I love Hand in Hand. I think it's incredible. There was hundreds of children's and family workers in the room, both paid and voluntary. So this last year, we were the main sponsors of the event alongside our friends at the Bible Society. And I think it is one of the most valuable assets that the tool has. And I don't just mean Hand in Hand, but actually children's ministry as a whole, I think is a really important place for us to be really exploring if we're not already.
Absolutely. So I'm curious to know if there's any differences within a rural context as opposed to an urban context when it comes to children's and families' work.
So, yes, there are some variations and there are some differences between how the two operate. So, as I've said in previous weeks, my background is in children, youth and families ministry. So before my role here at Rural Missions, I've been the missions director for British Youth for Christ. I've been a mission enabler working across central England for Scripture Union. I've been a youth and children's pastor in a little tiny village in St Albans. I've led a schools trust down in Salisbury in Wiltshire. And so there has been that real breadth of undertaking. And yes, there are some quite drastic moments as well. So let me tell you, when I was down in Salisbury, there was a little village not far away to the south of Salisbury, and we used to go in and do school assemblies. We'd do lessons, we'd do festivals and all of those kind of usual things that you'd expect from a Christian schools trust. But this one school that I went into had 18 children. I don't mean in the class, but 18 children from years 1 to 6. In this school. It was the tiniest school I've ever been in my life. And that is one of the big differences. So my son goes to a primary school opposite our house called Dalestorth. There's probably around 500 children in this school. Village churches can be very, very different because you just not got the critical mass nearby. But that doesn't change anything with how you could relate to that school. That school is still looking for support and encouragement and love. They're still looking for the church to be involved and supportive of what they're doing. And more often than not, in villages, the church is right next door to the school. So what a great space for it to be.
Absolutely. I actually remember living not too far from a school in the countryside as a little village. As you say, church wasn't that far away at all. It was just up the road. And the school itself, I think it had a total of 60 students, which, I mean, you've obviously seen a much smaller one than that, but 60 students, when I first came across it, seemed rather small. They actually had, rather than different classrooms, they just had all the children basically in one big classroom. They just sort of divided them by table, basically, but as you say, it's the same needs, just on a much smaller scale.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, that is a perfect space where children and young people are for pretty much the majority of their life. And so if you, as a church, are looking, how do we start to engage children and young people and their parents, then the school is the most perfect starting place in the world. But don't get me wrong, it can be quite difficult. So a lot of churches, when they see the school, think, oh no, I'm not really good at public speaking. I can't go and do assemblies. Schools aren't looking for you to come and have to do assemblies all the time. There are far simpler ways that you could start to engage in your school. And as you know, I work for Rural Missions, and we're looking at those small intentional stop, start and change things that people could get up to. And so how do you engage your local school if you don't already? Now, Lichfield Diocese ran a project a good number of years ago now. It was called Pray, Bake, Read. Pray for your local school. So many churches I meet aren't praying regularly for the local children or young people or families that are in their villages and beyond. They're not regularly praying for their local school. What might it look like on a Sunday morning to bring them in a bit more regular? But you don't need to stop there. You could start praying around the boundaries of the school. Or, as I started to do, and as a lot of churches that I've been supporting over the last couple of years have started to do, is what does it look like to start emailing somebody at the school every week? So I email the head teacher of the school every week to say, praying for you, on behalf of the church, we're praying for you, we're supportive of what you do. If there's anything we can be praying for you this week, then please do let us know. I started that when I was working in St Albans in this little village church, and for about a year and a half I didn't hear anything from the head teacher. But then I just got a random email one day back, because it's about the consistency. We continue to pray, so I'm going to continue to send the email. And the head teacher basically just said, I so appreciate that you pray for us every week. Actually, this might be my first time, but could you be praying for this that's about to happen in the school? And it's a very, very simple connection, but just being intentional in praying and letting them know you're praying is good. And then that's where the bake comes in. Most churches are good at baking cakes. I know a lot of people that make some good cake.
Yeah.
What does it look like to drop a cake into the school once a week, once a month, once every half term, with a note saying we're praying for you, we support you, but drop the cake in for the school staff room? Like my church in St Albans, we took a cake every week for the staff room. Some teachers didn't appreciate it because they're like, you're making me fat. What are you doing? But actually just a very simple way to bless them with the card going, if we can be praying for anything, email prayer@name of church here. Beautiful, simple, nice, easy connection. And then you have the read. Going in to listen to readers, like most days I now sit at home with my 4-year-old son and listen to him do his reading for the day. And actually there's a real beauty and joy in seeing the progression of a child. Admittedly, he's mine, but imagine you've got some space once a week to go listen to some kids read for half an hour. You're supporting the school, you're supporting that child. And actually, I've known people that have really built connection with that child, and then that child's ended up coming to an event with their family, and that beautiful moment of how do we bless, how do we support, and in turn, actually there becomes this openness to what faith might mean for them.
That's really interesting. Pray, bake, and
Read.
read. That sounds really cool. Especially like how with the prayer, so you were sending that consistently every day, day in, day out, and you didn't necessarily see something come back from that until a year on. And you mentioned a really important word there, consistency. So when people are making a change, starting or stopping something to be more intentional, a big part of that is consistently being, intentional and consistent.
Yeah. Yeah, because you just don't know what might happen. So it was week in, week out. I was doing the email. Like a daily might be a bit intense for the head teacher, but whatever works for you, once a month. It's not going to take you much time to copy and paste the same email, but you make it work for what you need to. Because actually children are the now of the church. They're not the future of the church. Like they have a real critical part to play. So at Rural Missions, back in June last year, we merged another charity in called the Resources Cupboard. And I know during the Hand in Hand conference, Becky, who was leading the Resources Cupboard, came on to Pure as well and shared some of her story, and that basically she didn't want to merge in with us. She said no chance, and then God changed her mind, as well as a very long email answering her problems from me. But for us, it's been really key because the amount of churches that come and say, there are 1 or 2 children in our village, there's a handful of young people in our village, and we've just got no idea where to start. actually being able to support. We have 2 staff members that are dedicated to children, youth and family support. How do we help churches to really engage with local children? And one of the great things that we released about 3 months ago now was a little booklet called Visiting a Church. What is it all about? So this booklet is aimed at young children, so primary age children, probably around year 3 to year 6. And it's a 32-page full colour booklet where, if you're an adult, you can probably remember going into a church on a school visit and going, what is church all about? Well, here's the font and let's do a brass rubbing of it and all of those things. And oftentimes churches are ill prepared as to how do we do this. So this booklet, they're 30 pence each. It's the most expensive thing we do. And it's basically, you give it to the child and it goes through some of the traditions, some of the things that we have, whether you're a church in a factory, like we are, we're in an old knicker factory as a church, through to a more old school traditional church building with a spire. And it just helps them to go on that journey as a child as to what church is all about. So they're available on our website. I've known a whole load of rural churches now that are buying them for those school visits, but actually they're putting them at the back of their church and going, every other month we might have a random child come in. We've now got something that we can use to support them and to help them to understand what church is about. Or they come for a baptism, they come for a funeral or a wedding. The Verge has actually got something to be able to give children to not just be in the space, but to learn what faith looks like in this space.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. So these children all have, I mean, we can take for granted the knowledge that we have of what church is, what Christianity is. But if someone simply doesn't know what that is, to be able to provide them with that information in a manner which they can understand is so important.
Yeah, so that's why we thought it was good to put out. And we've actually sent out thousands of these already, which for a small charity, we're not making a profit on them at 30 pence each, but we just see it as a vital resource to support the church and to encourage children into what that faith space looks like. But there is a whole load of ways that we can engage. And I think the thing that I hear from churches in rural communities especially is we've not got capacity, or we've not got the time, we've not got the energy, or actually we've not got a youth worker in our church, so we can't do youth work. And to me, I go, well, that doesn't matter. Some of the best youth workers I know are in their 70s and 80s that just have a heart for them. Like, they're not skilled, they're not trained, but actually they're just creating safe spaces where children, young people can come and be. The amount of rural churches now that are opening up their churches after school as just like a warm space to come and do homework, to come and have a hot chocolate. Down in Sharnbrook Deanery and a whole load of churches around the sort of St Albans diocese, we've been working for a number of years with them. And one of the most popular things that we share is about the hot choc stop. So when children and young people have finished their schools for the day, that one bus that comes in for the day to drop the kids off, because there ain't going to be a secondary school in your village, they actually drop off near the church. And so many churches are now going out with some flasks of hot chocolate, squirty cream and marshmallows, not to go, here, let me tell you the gospel, but actually to go, here, let us love and encourage and support you. And it leads on to other stuff, but actually just that simple act of going, do you want a hot chocolate, opens up a whole world of conversation for them.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, who doesn't love a good hot chocolate? And if the bus stop literally is outside the church, what a simple way of reaching out to those people and putting a smile on their faces. Yeah. That's amazing.
So there are lots of ways you can engage children, young people, families, whether there's only one or two in the village or whether there's a whole multitude. Or even if you're in an urban space, like, please don't hear me wrong, you should be talking to children, young people and families as well, all with the right safeguarding and all those kind of bits in place. And But actually, for me, it was only because people took that space to engage me that I now know Jesus, that I didn't see hope, I didn't see life, I didn't see meaning. And what did that youth group I first wander into do? Well, they had a pool table, they had some PlayStations, they had Pepsi Max on the squirty gun, and sold chip cobs at 60 pence each. Like, it wasn't Bible studies every day. It was just Christians being in a space, providing a space, and loving young people. And it was that started to make the difference. And I think we can get waylaid by projects and programs, and I've got to do X, Y, or Z, or the church up the road is doing a youth alpha, or they've got posh projectors and smoke and strobe lights and all these. And it's like, that's not what young people are looking for. They're looking for a space to be themselves. Actually, the Children's Act was looking at what are the 3 needs for children, and it's to stay safe, be healthy, and be heard, or something along those lines. As I say it, I'm realizing it wasn't in my head. But they just want to be themselves. They want to be heard and understood and valued. And if the church can't do that, then I don't know if anyone can.
Absolutely. That's what the church is really there for. And something you mentioned earlier, which is, I think, a really important thing, is this idea that has been floated around that children are tomorrow's church rather than actually being today's church. And that is something that's always grated with me. Like, I could get onto a soapbox about that, how people can say things like the children are the church of tomorrow, or the next generation of this, rather than actually seeing what they can do now. And that's really important, valuable stance to be making. So I just wanted to pick up on that, because that's one of my soapboxes, to be honest.
And it's a good soapbox to have, Stephen, for sure.
Absolutely. So yeah, we were talking a bit about some of the resources you have. I absolutely love that booklet that you mentioned, because so many people nowadays, particularly children, don't have perhaps the same education. So a number of years ago, people would know all about Bible stories and all kinds of stuff. They'd be quite knowledgeable about that kind of thing. But nowadays, it's much less people are much less knowledgeable about that. So to bring to children that knowledge of what is church, why is this here, just to me seems super simple and so important. Actually, could be very easily overlooked.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, I was at a event called Amplify. So we're partners on this Young Evangelist Training Academy. So it brings together young people aged 12 to 17 from across the country. So those that feel they have the gift of the evangelist. So very specific remit. But we gathered 150 of them for a residential, and they go on a bit of a training course with us across 6 months. And we just got to the end of it. And one girl was sharing her story that she had the opportunity in front of her school to come and do the school assembly and to share her faith, to share her story, like, why is she a Christian? And she was starting to talk. She mentioned Adam and Eve, and she realized there was a blankness across her school, and only a few people in the school actually knew who she was referring to. Like, I'm not that old, like I'm early 40s, let's say. Well, I am early 40s, so it would be true to say. But I was brought up in school with those stories. People would come do my assemblies and all those kind of things. Whereas now, it's, as you say, it's just not a given. And I wonder whether that's because the church have just become a bit more silent, or they're afraid of what legislation and things might mean. And, I can't say what I used to say in schools. And it's like, we can. The opportunities are there. It's just how you approach them. So many people go and approach a school saying, could I come and do your Christian assemblies? I want to tell everyone about Jesus. And it's like, that's a lovely thing, but that's not helping the school. Going to the school and saying, are there any areas of church could be supporting you? And more often than not, there are lots of ways that could lead to assemblies, or having the church the school come into your church for services and harvest and all those, and you get to share Jesus, and that's part of the privilege of serving the school. And so you're right, there has been a bit of a shift where people just don't know what the Bible has in it, And I think that's a bit scary, but it's also an incredible opportunity. And so those children, young people that we have, we need to be investing in and supporting and encouraging. I've also got a story of another girl. She is in lower sixth at her school, and a couple of years ago, she got a vision from God to say, I want you to start doing a youth alpha in your school. This school has never had really any Christian ministry. Churches haven't been in for a long time. And so she approached the teacher, and the teacher said, yeah, you can have a room, do it. Her and her sister start this Christian union. They have dozens of people start to come to the Christian union. They've since run a mission week in there. They've took a band in. They've got it funded and all those kind of things. And then a few months ago, she was praying, God, give me an opportunity. And the teacher, on her way into the school after saying that prayer, stopped her and said, would you come do an assembly to the entire sixth form? And there's like 200-300 people in this sixth form. And I just want you to share why you're a Christian. So she did the assembly. Not that day. It was like a couple of weeks later. She had prep time. But out of the back of that, there was one boy she'd never really spoke to. The following Sunday morning, he walked 1 hour and 45 minutes to our church, because she was in our church. And it just so happened she was also speaking that Sunday morning as we did like these TED Talk style moments. And he said, there was just something in what you said that I've never heard before, and I wanted to know more. So he walked 1 hour and 45 to come to church to hear more.
Wow.
It's beautiful. That's what young people are about. They search for truth. They look for truth. And so we need to be there and speak truth to them.
That's amazing. I mean, something you've mentioned before is that gentle approach which Rural Missions takes, very gentle. And in that story, there was no forcing her way into something, just asked a simple question. And that opened up an opportunity where she could speak. And that opened up an opportunity for someone to come to church. Yeah. It's not being forceful, not pushing, asking those questions. What can we do? What's needed? Can I do this Alpha course? And asking those questions, seeing what's needed, and letting God do the rest, really.
Yeah, exactly. So if any of that's resonated with you and you're exploring children, youth and families, the Visiting Church book's on our website for you to be able to order. We've got a children, youth and families toolkit, like an audit for you that you can order. But we've got a whole load of free resources and curriculum plans and videos, and we'd love to come and have a chat with you. So whether you're rural, urban, or any kind of church, then just get in touch with us, ruralmissions.org.uk. We'd love to support you. The caveat I always joke is that if you're in a rural area, we'll come for free. Everything we offer is free apart from that 30 pence booklet. If you're in an urban area, we might look to charge you so that we can support the rural, under-resourced, under-supported. But hey, just get in touch. We'd love to have a chat.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us again, Bob. It's been an absolute pleasure. Look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Thank you.